All right, let's open up our Bibles to Judges chapter 9. Judges chapter 9. Well, sorry, chapter 8. So we're in Judges chapter 8. That's where we're going to begin at. 8:28. Judges 8:28. So what we see here is, remember the last couple of classes and sermons, we've gone over how the Midianite people were big bullies and taking advantage and hurting God's people, stealing their food, killing their sheep, making life miserable for them for about 7 years. And then God raises up Gideon and helps empower him. And so finally, God conquers the Midianites, defeats them through Gideon, and says that Midian was subdued. They were conquered before the sons of Israel, and they didn't come up against them anymore. The land was undisturbed for 40 years. So 40 years, they had peace, they had God's blessings, all was going okay. And Gideon, or his name is Jerubbaal, the son of Joash, went and lived in his own house. Now Gideon had 70 sons who were his direct descendants because he had many wives. So this is again another representation that people did what was right in their own eyes. Yes, he had just worked for God, but it doesn't mean that everything he did was according to God's will. Just because he had all of these wives and kids doesn't mean it was according to God's way of doing things. So he had 70 sons, lots of wives. One of his was a concubine, and I was trying to see what's the difference between a concubine. It's like, they are a wife, but a servant wife, like just more of a servant or a slave wife. But anyway, one of his concubines, she was from the town of Shechem, and she had a son, and Gideon named him Abimelech. Gideon died at a ripe old age and was buried in the tomb of his father in Ophrah. Then it came about as soon as Gideon was dead, that the sons of Israel again played the harlot. They had infidelity. Some Bibles will say practice whoredom. They were practicing harlotry. They were practicing prostitution. They were committing adultery, spiritual adultery. Instead of loving God, being faithful to God, they were cheating on God with other gods. You see, they were supposed to be, I'm only faithful to you, and now they're cheating with other gods. And what's interesting, I brought this up on Wednesday, is they played the harlot with the Baals and made Baal Bereth their god. And that Baal means Lord, and Bereth is covenant. And so the town of Shechem is where God made his covenant. Basically, Abraham had a thing there. Joshua also they reaffirmed and said, we will follow God. We will follow God. We will follow God. You know, they gave their verbal commitment that we will follow God at Shechem. And Joshua, in Joshua chapter 24, he's going to build a stone out of this, let me see. So just so you guys know, I know you can't really see it, but just so Israel is a long, skinny country, and Jerusalem is down here, and Shechem is up here, and it sits in a valley. Mount Gerizim is on this side of it, and Mount Ebal is on that side of it, and there's a valley that goes in between those two mountain ranges. And so Shechem is there. This is where Jesus would have been at with the Samaritans. Remember how the Samaritans said, we worship on this mountain, and you guys worship down here on Mount Zion? And so that's where they were worshiping at, is up there. So this Shechem has a significant place for history with God's people. And so that's where they're at. But that's where the covenant was agreed upon. And when you look at it, it says in Joshua 24 that after they made this promise to God, that they said, we promise to stay faithful, hold it against us. If we break your covenant, hold it against us. We promise. And Joshua set up this stone, and this is the stone that you guys can go visit today if you still want to. It's been broken down, but that's the stone that is at Shechem that you guys can go see to this very day. So it was a large stone, and it was at Shechem. And we'll find out that that's where Abimelech, this next judge, is going to be crowned king, is at that stone. And so it's kind of interesting. And now you can kind of see the size of it. You can kind of see the size of it with this guy standing right here. But that's Joshua 24 and then Judges 9, which is what we're about getting ready into. So you could see it was a big stone, probably, that they made that covenant with God at this place in Shechem. But isn't it interesting that that's the covenant that they made with God, and now the Baal, they call this temple Baal Bereth, the Lord of Covenant. That's the name of this place. And so they just change. They're still a covenant related, but now they're giving that to God, to Baal instead of to God. So thus the sons of Israel did not remember. We've had a couple of lessons that it said, don't forget when you get into the land of promised land flowing with milk and honey and you become comfortable, it's real easy to forget that it's God who gave you these things. And when you forget, you tend to turn away from God. And sure enough, the sons of Israel did not remember the Lord their God, who had delivered them from the hands of all their enemies on every side. So they turned away from God, they forgot, nor, verse 35, did they show kindness to the household of Jerubbaal, which is Gideon, in accord with all the good that he had done. So it's almost like you're putting Gideon and God. God saved you, and you forgot him. Gideon saved you, and you forgot him. You turned against God, and you turned against Gideon. So it's like they're almost held like in parallel, that you forgot. You weren't faithful to God. You didn't show him kindness. You didn't remember him, and it's like you forgot all that Jerubbaal had done as well after 40 years of having this peace. Now, what's going to happen is sometimes we see you have a good leader, and once that leader, like Joshua and other leaders that have gone away, now it's filled sometimes not with the best leader. And so one of Gideon, Jerubbaal's sons, his name was Abimelech. Remember, he's the son of the concubine. So Abimelech goes to Shechem, where his mother's relatives are at, and he spoke to them, to the whole clan. See, they had clans back there too. So said the whole clan of the household of his mother's father, and said, he spoke to all the leaders of Shechem. Which one is better for you? That 70 men, all of Gideon's 70 sons, is it better that those 70 sons and all the sons of Jerubbaal, is it better that they rule over you? Or should one man rule over you? Also, don't forget, I am your relatives. I'm of your blood and bone. You know, I'm your blood relatives. Whereas those other sons, they're with different wives. Me, I'm from Shechem. So Shechem had some sort of political power. It had some sort of political influence around Israel. And so you can see that, remember once Gideon defeated the Midianites, what did all of Israel want to make Gideon? They wanted to make him what? They want to make him king. It was already showing the desire of the people that they wanted a king. And if you remember, Gideon said, no, I will not be your king, and my sons will not be your king, nor my grandsons, but God is your king. And then as soon as he dies, one of his sons says, do you want these 70 men to rule over you, or one? there's a desire still there that we would want a king. And now they're going to take advantage. And so what's interesting is we usually count Abimelech as a judge, but if you read how God raised up Ehud and Deborah and Barak and Gideon, it says that God was kind of behind it. We don't see anything like that here. See, we don't see that God raised up Abimelech to be a deliverer. You know, that wasn't like his, it seems like Abimelech is doing what's right in his own eyes. He's doing evil, but God is going to use that for his purposes of still destroying the Canaanites and those people who have worshiping Baal and going against him and all of those kinds of things. You see, so God can take even people's evil intentions like Pharaoh and then turn it to do his will. So in verse 3, his mother's relatives, all of his family members, they spoke all these words. They said, hey, yeah, we should follow Abimelech, and they spoke it in front of all the leaders of Shechem, and they were inclined to follow Abimelech. They're like, yeah, that sounds good. He is our relative. We should just go ahead and have him. So, verse 4, they gave Abimelech 70 pieces of silver from where? The house of Baal Bereth. They're using the money from Baal's temple and using that to give to Abimelech. They're agreeing together, say, hey, yeah, we want to follow you, and they back him financially. So Shechem backs up Abimelech, and the first thing Abimelech does in verse 4 is he hires worthless and reckless fellows, and they followed him. Bunch of wicked, no good thugs that are going to do whatever Abimelech says. If you want to do some damage, then follow me, and I'll pay you. Sign me up, right? And so these guys are evil and reckless, and they followed him. And the first thing they do after that is they go up to Orpha, where Gideon's sons are at, and they killed his brothers, Gideon's sons, 70 men on one stone. But one of the brothers, the youngest one, his name is Jotham, he was able to escape, and he hid from Abimelech. But all 68 other brothers were slaughtered on that stone. So you can see this is not God's will. God is not desiring to have Gideon's sons slaughtered, but yet Abimelech, this is what he does, and seems to have no shame whatsoever. Verse 6, all the men of Shechem and all of Beth Millo assembled together, and they went and made Abimelech king by the oak of the pillar which is in Shechem. The pillar, this is it. That stone. So you remember where God's people were like, we promise to follow you, God. You're going to be our only God. That stone, that's where they anoint Abimelech king. We're making a covenant, basically, with you, Abimelech, to be our king. So it's crazy as you see all of this play out. And when Jotham found out, the youngest brother, the one who hid himself, he went and stood on top of Mount Gerizim. Remember, Mount Gerizim is up on the mountain and Shechem is down here. So Jotham got up there and he yelled out from the top of the mountain, and he said to them, listen to me, O Shechem, that God may listen to you. And he's going to give different people call it different things. A parable, a fable, some sort of story. It's a prophecy, some kind. And he says to Shechem, once the trees went forth to anoint a king over them. Now, what trees want to anoint a king over them? So you see, it's already figurative, right? Trees are not trying to make a king over them. So it's a story. But the trees went and they wanted to have a king over them. And they said to the olive tree, you rule over us. But the olive tree said, I can't leave my fatness with which God and men are honored and to wave or to like hover over the trees. Then the trees, well, if the olive tree won't rule over us, let's go to the fig tree. Fig tree, you rule over us. But the fig tree said, I cannot leave my sweetness and my good fruit to wave over the top of you guys. So then the trees went to the vine, the grapevine, and they said, you rule over us. But the vine said to them, shall I leave my new wine, which cheers God and men, and go to wave or be over the top of the trees? Finally, all the trees said to the bramble, the tumbleweed. That's how I imagine it, tumbleweed. Went to the tumbleweed and said, you come and rule over us. So the tumbleweed was like, yeah, all right, that sounds awesome. I'm just a tumbleweed, but then I'm going to rule over all the trees, and so you come rule over us. And the bramble said to the trees, if in truth you are anointing me as king over you, come and take refuge in my shade. Imagine a tumbleweed telling a tree to come in my shade. And consume, come and take refuge in my shade. But if not, if you don't come and follow my leadership, then may fire come out from the bramble, from the tumbleweed. If this doesn't happen, then may fire come from the tumbleweed and burn up all the trees, the cedars of Lebanon. Okay? Now, what does that have to do with anything? So, we're going to get the explanation from, what's the kid's name again? Jotham? Is it Jotham? I already forgot his name. Jotham? Yeah. So now Jotham is going to explain this for us a little bit in verse 16. He says now, he's yelling from the mountaintop, right? Because he's afraid that Abimelech's going to come kill him too. So he's yelling this. He says, now therefore, you guys of Shechem, if you have dealt in truth and integrity, if you've done right by making Abimelech king, and if you have dealt well with Jerubbaal and his house, and have dealt well with him as he deserved, let's skip down to verse 19. Here's if you've done well, if you have dealt well in truth and integrity with Jerubbaal and his house, all of his sons, then rejoice. Then be happy that you appointed Abimelech as your king. And let him rejoice in you. But if you have not dealt in truth and in integrity, you've done something evil, you've done something deceptive, then let fire come out from the tumbleweed and consume the men of Shechem, and let fire come out from the men of Shechem and consume Abimelech. So basically what he's saying is, if you've done well, then great. If you haven't done well, then may this curse of fire, may Abimelech burn you up, and may you guys burn up Abimelech, is basically what this is saying. And then if you look up here, he's saying, yeah, you guys forgot how Gideon delivered you from the hand of Midian, and you have risen against my father's house. You killed his sons, 70 men on one stone. You made Abimelech, the son of a maidservant, king over the men of Shechem. So he's reminding them, no, you didn't do right. You didn't act faithfully or just or according to truth, you see. So that's sort of like a prophecy. Then Jotham escaped, and he ran away and went to a place called Beer and remained there because of Abimelech, his brother. Verse 22. Any questions so far? Any questions so far? Yeah.
So Abimelech is Gideon's son.
Yes.
So he killed his brothers when he went up there. Oh, okay.
Yeah, Abimelech is Gideon, one of his 70 sons, and then he slaughters all of his brothers.
Except for the youngest.
Except for the youngest, which is Jotham. Yeah. Yeah, he just slaughters all of his brothers because of power, greed, jealousy, whatever. I mean, we see this how many times throughout the Bible of Cain killing his own brother, of Joseph's brothers trying to kill him. You know, we have, when we get to King David, we're going to have his sons killing each other for power. I mean, this is just an ongoing thing where brothers are fighting and killing each other or wanting to kill each other for power. And that just is a constant pull at us. Pride of life, right? Yeah, Russ?
That's interesting because Jesus constantly says to love your brother.
Love your brothers. Yeah, love them.
This history of it not happening.
Yeah.
He says, but you guys.
Yep. Yep. And man, sometimes even in our own families, right? We can be harshest with our own family members. You know, we can be very harsh with our own family members. So this is an example that, yeah, this kind of stuff, especially when you have multiple wives, multiple different mothers, you know, that kind of thing. The kids are like, well, you're not my real dad or my real mom or whatever. You know, it's just, it gets difficult. And so we see that in verse 22, Abimelech ruled over Israel for 3 years. So he becomes the king. But notice what God does. God is still in control. Seems like a lot of bad things are happening, but God is still in control. So God sends an evil spirit. Remember, for Gideon, he sends his spirit that covered Gideon like clothing. He sends his spirit over Gideon. But now it says God sends an evil spirit. Now, what is that? I don't know. Is it sort of like thoughts that are implanted somehow? Again, God doesn't force people to do anything. But there's some sort of spirit of evil that God is allowing to go into the people in between Abimelech and the people of Shechem. And so now that evil spirit is like maybe, because when we're living in the world, I'm not faithful to anybody. When I am focused on selfishness, I will always do what's best for me. And so God knows that. And so he's going to use these types of mentalities of selfishness. And now it says the men of Shechem dealt treacherously with Abimelech. So at first they were being like, yeah, we want you to be king. But now after 3 years, they're like, okay, we're done with this guy. So verse 24, the violence done to the 70 sons of Jerubbaal might come, and their blood might be laid on Abimelech, their brother, who killed them, and on the men of Shechem. So the men of Shechem, they set an ambush against Abimelech on the tops of the mountains. So it doesn't sound like Abimelech lived in Shechem. Sounds like he may have been out and about. And so there's this evil plan to betray Shechem or Abimelech. So the people of the leaders of Shechem are like, okay, let's set an ambush up in the mountains for Abimelech. And so they start stealing from Abimelech and attacking his army and all of that kind of stuff. So they set an ambush against Abimelech at the tops of the mountains, and they robbed all who passed by. But it was told to Abimelech that it was Shechem who was behind all of this. We'll see that here in a bit. So there's a new guy that's going to come into the picture. His name is Gaal. He came with his relatives and crossed over into Shechem, and the men of Shechem put their trust in Gaal. So you see, they're fickle. They're not faithful to anybody. Like, who's going to be the next one to give us what we want, you know? And so it doesn't seem like Shechem is all Israelite people. It seems like Shechem's got some Israelites, but it's also got a lot of Canaanites in it as well. Remember that influence that intermeshes? If you're not faithful, it seems like there's Canaanites and Israelites in Shechem. So anyway, you've got this new guy named Gaal, and he comes over to Shechem, and the men of Shechem put their faith and trust in him. And so the people of Shechem, they go out into the field, they gather all these grapes, they stomp them down into new wine, and they held a festival, and they went into the house of their God, which would be probably Baal Bereth, most likely. And they ate and drank and they cursed Abimelech. Then Gaul, this new guy, he said, after they're having a good time and he gets a little courage, and he's like, who's Abimelech? Who is Shechem that we should serve them? Is he not the son of Jerubbaal? Isn't he the son of Gideon? And Zebul, isn't that guy Abimelech's lieutenant? Why are you guys having to follow Zebul? Seems like I said, Abimelech is kind of not living in Shechem. He's out and about. And he left Zebul in control of Shechem. And this new guy, Gaul, says, you guys are having to follow Zebul, who's in following Abimelech. Why are you guys following them? Why don't you serve the men of Hamor, the father of Shechem? I'm really a part of your people. I'm really a part of your people. Our real great-great-grandfather is Hamor, and he's the one who brought Shechem anyway. Why should we serve those guys? Verse 29, would therefore that this people were under my authority, I would get rid of Abimelech. And people are like, yeah, that would be great. And again, you see his pride. Tell Abimelech to increase his army and come out against me, basically. Now Zebul, remember, he's the ruler of the city. He heard the words of Gaul, and his anger burned. You're going to fight for power, and you're always going to be trying to say, I'm the one in control, I'm the one in power. And so he's going to send messengers secretly, deceptively, so that Gaul and nobody from Shechem finds out. He's like, you know what? Is that how Shechem feels? They don't like me? Okay. So he sends out these secret messengers to go tell Abimelech. Most likely, Zebul's the one who also told Abimelech that it was Shechem that was trying to ambush him up in the mountains. It was him that was telling this story, you see, telling him the input. So, anyway, Zebul's going to send some and tell Abimelech that Gaul have come into Shechem and they're stirring up the city against you. Get up by night, you and the people who are with you, and go wait in the field. So Zebul is telling Abimelech exactly what's happening and what to do. He's telling him how to attack, how to set up the plan to destroy all of these guys. He's setting it all up. And he says, you guys, Abimelech, you guys wait in the field. You guys wait in the field, and then it can be done whatever you want. Verse 33, in the morning, as soon as the sun comes up, you will rise up, rush on the city, and behold, when he, meaning Gaul, when Gaul and the people who are with him come out against you, do to him whatever you can. So Zebul's like, man, I know what can happen to Baal and all of his prideful people. And yeah, you go up against Abimelech and you'll see what happens, you see. So Abimelech and all of the people who were with him, they got up at night, got this message, and they don't wait around. They got up and run down into the field that night. And they waited against the city of Shechem with 4 different groups, 4 different companies. Gaul, remember the prideful guy, he went out in the morning and he stood in the entrance of the city gate. And Abimelech and the people who were with him, so Gaul is looking out and he sees Abimelech rise up and all of his soldiers, and they start running towards the city. And verse 36, when Gaul saw the people, he said to Zebul, remember the leader that got betrayed kind of? He told Zebul, he says, look, there's people coming down from the mountains. And Zebul said to him, man, you're crazy. You're just seeing shadows in the mountains as if they were men. What do they call that? Gaslighting? Like they call that, like, it's true, but in reality, you're making it seem like you're seeing things, you're believing false things. So Gaul is seeing these people coming, and he's like, man, there's people coming. And Zebul's like, man, you're seeing shadows. That's all in your mind, dude. And so we don't know how long this is happening. We don't know how long, between verse 36 and 37, we don't know how long this is. So it's giving time for Abimelech and his army to get closer and closer and closer to the city. So then Gaul spoke again and said, people are coming down from the highest part of the land, and one company is even over here by the diviner's oak, like I see them. And then Zebul said to him, where's your boasting now? Weren't you the one saying, bring on Abimelech in your big mouth? Like, why are you afraid now? If you're so bad, then go for it. Right here it is. Where's your boasting now with which you said, who is Abimelech that we should serve him? Is this not the people whom you despised? Isn't it the people you are cursing? Go out now and fight with them. You think you're all that? Then go ahead. Go fight them, right? There they are. Well, in this time period, guess what is a huge deal? Pride. He had made these big boastful prides in front of all of Shechem before all the people. And he's like, okay. And he's calling him out right in front. And so they go out, and Abimelech chased him. So they finally went out and fought with Abimelech, and Abimelech chased him, Gaul, and he fled before Abimelech, and many fell wounded at the entrance of the gate. So Abimelech ended up leaving after all the Gaul and his people go back into the city. Abimelech goes back out. But Zebul, he chases Gaul and his relatives out. I mean, they're like, you get out of our city. You were this guy that said you were going to take on Abimelech. Well, you didn't. Get out. So Zebul is showing that he's got some political savvy, right? He's got some of this knowing how to deal with a rebel. Anyway, they get rid of Gaul, and the next day it comes about that the people of Shechem went out into the field, maybe to collect the dead or to get some food or whatever. So it was told to Abimelech, probably through Zebul again. And Abimelech took his people and divided into 3 companies, and they laid in wait. And when he looked and saw the people coming out from the city, he arose and killed them all. He killed them all. Abimelech is bringing judgment on Shechem for betraying him. You want to betray me? You want to follow this guy named Gaul? Okay, I'm going to wipe you out. And he slaughters them. Abimelech and the company who was with him dashed forward into the city gate, and they destroyed all who were in the field and slaughtered them. Abimelech fought against the city that day. He captured and killed the people. He tore down this city and sowed it with salt. Like basically, you are not going to live here again. You're not going to plant crops here again. You are not going to be a city again. I mean, Abimelech wipes this place out. So all the leaders, they end up going into this tower of Shechem, and they're gathered in this tower, which could be around Bel Bereth, perhaps. There's this high tower, and all the leaders, they gather inside, and Abimelech, when he knows that they're in there, he goes up on a mountainside and gets an axe and chops down a big old branch, and he says, everybody else, you go get some wood too. And they come and put all that wood around that tower, and they burn that place down with all of its leaders, and including 1,000 men and women who were in there as well. The tumbleweed has come to burn down Shechem and destroy all of those people who asked the tumbleweed to come rule over them. And here it is, they're getting burned up. Isn't that crazy how you see that come back around? And then what happens is, after he slaughters Shechem, because they wanted basically Abimelech dead, so Abimelech destroys them, and they're a bunch of idol worshipers. So this is God. Ultimately, this is God's judgment on Shechem. using Abimelech. But Abimelech in his pride goes to the next city called Thebes. And they also have a city wall, and he conquers the wall again, and he's got this pride, and all the people, they also have a tower in the middle. And so he's going right up, and they're going to do the same thing. Well, as Abimelech is going up against this tower, the people are way up on top, and they had stones, and millstones were heavy. They would use these stones to grind the grain like in a mill to make flour. Big old heavy millstone, and a woman up on top had dropped that on top of Abimelech's head, and it says it crushed his skull. And so in verse, a certain woman threw an upper millstone on Abimelech's head, crushing his skull. Then he quickly told a young man who is his armor bearer, "Hurry, take out your sword and kill me, so that it will not be said of me, a woman killed me." So the man took out a sword and killed Abimelech. And yet here we are 3,000 years later, and it is known that a woman killed Abimelech. Right? So anyway, after Abimelech is dead, when Israel saw that Abimelech was dead, each one went away to his home. No more leader, so everybody just went away. Notice how we don't see that it was God anywhere delivering his people up until this point. But now it says it was God who repaid the wickedness of Abimelech. Because it would seem like Abimelech got away with a bunch of evil. He slaughtered all of his brothers. That's wickedness. That's evil. How could this happen? Where's God? God was still at work. It took several years. But it says God repaid the wickedness of Abimelech, which he had done to his father in killing his 70 brothers. And God returned all the wickedness of the men of Shechem on their heads. And the curse of Jotham, the son of Jerubbaal, came upon them. So we don't see anything good said about Abimelech, and yet he's part of this judge. But God uses certain men to bring judgment on certain parts of Israel and on his people and on the Canaanites as well. So that was a lot to go through. We're a little bit over time, but any final questions, thoughts? Are you clear? Any understandings? Does that make a little bit more sense as you read through that? You guys see some of those things? Again, I know there's a lot to cover, but hopefully you get an idea of who Abimelech was and how God could still use somebody who is doing what was right in his own eyes, a lot of evil, and yet God could still twist that for his purposes and for what was his ultimate desire to bring judgment on those who are rebelling against him. See? All right. Let's pray. Thank you, God. Thank you for giving us your teachings and praying that we never lose hope that you are going to be the just God, that you will always do what's right, even it seems like when there's so much evil going on around us. Just as you did back then, you will bring your justice. You will bring your judgment on those who refuse to do your will. Help us to be more like Gideon, to humble ourselves to your will. When you call us, be sent out to accomplish what you want us to do, that we will humbly do it, that we won't do what's right in our own eyes, but to do what's right according to your will. We thank you for Jesus, who perfectly showed that. It's in his name we pray. Amen.